Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Haribol. Look at the picture above you. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Vaishnav-Trishata-Shri Srimad Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotrishata-Shri Srimad Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Maya Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, titled The Creative Impetus, Chapter 14, The Forest of Enjoyment. We're on text 40. Would you like to?
Yadapi digi bajayino yadvino yevai raja shayak kim tu param mridhe shayiran asyam eva mameyam iti krita vairānubandhāyām visrijya swayamupasanghritaha.
All right. Translation. Commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There were many great saintly kings who were very expert in performing sacrificial rituals and very competent in conquering other kingdoms. Yet, despite their power, they could not attain the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is because those great kings could not even conquer the false consciousness of, I am this body, and this is my property. Thus, they simply created enmity with rival kings, fought with them, and died without having discharged life's real mission. Purport. The real mission of life for the conditioned soul is to re-establish the forgotten relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in devotional service so that he may revive Krishna consciousness after giving up the body. One doesn't have to give up his occupation as a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or whatever. In any position, while discharging his prescribed duty, one can develop Krishna consciousness simply by associating with devotees who are representatives of Krishna and who can teach this science. Regretfully, the big politicians and leaders in the material world simply create enmity and are not interested in spiritual advancement. Material advancement may be very pleasing to an ordinary man, but ultimately he is defeated because he identifies himself with the material body and considers everything related to it to be his property. This is ignorance. Actually, nothing belongs to him, not even the body. By one's karma, one gets a particular body, and if he does not utilize his body to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all his activities are frustrated. The real purpose of life is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 13. Ataḥ pumbhir dvija-śreṣṭhā varṇāśrama-vibhāgaśaḥ svanuṣṭhitasya dharmasya saṁsiddhir hari-toṣaṇam. It really doesn't matter what activity a man engages in. If he can simply satisfy the Supreme Lord, his life is successful. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gadajana Shalakya Chakshuvannaditamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karidvachalam Pangam Mulangayate Gadim Yakripadamaham Vande Shri Gurundi Tarinam Vancha Kapadribhisha Kripa Sandhibhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Right, translation again. There were many great saintly kings who were very expert in performing sacrificial rituals and very competent in conquering other kingdoms. Yet despite their power, they could not attain the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is because those great kings could not even conquer the false consciousness of, I am this body, and this is my property. Thus, they simply created enmity with rival kings, fought with them, and died without having discharged life's real mission. So Saul's cooking breakfast? Oh. Govardhan's cooking breakfast. So Govardhan's cooking breakfast and Saul's cooking lunch. What about Mogalila? What is he doing? Cooking breakfast for himself? Oh, okay. Mahabhart's, yeah, he's cooking, Raj. It's kitchen religion, right? Srila Prabhupada was at a person's house one time in India, and how long does it take you to make khichdi in that thing you use? What is it called? Pressure cooker? How long does it take? 10 minutes? That's fast. A dal, you do rice too? Yeah, dal rice, vegetables, 10 minutes. You just turn it on and come back in 10 minutes and you're good to go, right? So Srila Prabhupada was once, he was in India and he was at somebody's house, and it was a pious Hindu man, and he was obviously a householder with his family, and Srila Prabhupada just finished dinner, and then he was with his disciples to the side, and Prabhupada, he pointed to that householder and he said, "You see that man?" He said he could be performing the duties of varṇāśrama his whole life, and still he'll go to hell. That's what Prabhupada said. So what does that mean? Like here it says, there were many great saintly kings. So it wasn't like, oh, there were many, rascal kings, right? No, it says great saintly kings who were very expert in performing sacrificial rituals, and competent, right, in conquering other kingdoms. So, and then you say, oh, what do you mean they're competent? They're competent conquering other kingdoms. That sounds really mundane. Well, that's what Kshatriyas do. They conquer other kingdoms. They're not just sitting back in their office. They're out there conquering. So it's part of a duty of a Kshatriya. But not only were they just doing that, but they were great and they were saintly. But despite all that, they couldn't what? They couldn't attain the loving service of Krishna. They couldn't attain the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, just like Srila Prabhupada said, oh, you see that man? He may be performing varṇāśrama duties his whole life, but he'll go to hell. Means that he may be a good householder, right? He may be following pious religious principles, but if he's not serving Krishna, if he's not pleasing Krishna ultimately, then what's the point? Nor can just performing these the pious duties of a householder can one attain Krishna. So what's the point? And ultimately, like Srila Prabhupada said, he'll go to hell, which means that to stay on that pious platform, practically, and especially in this age of Kali, it's not practical, not possible practically to do that. You see, with the Jamil, he was a pious Brahmin. He wasn't a pure devotee, but he was a pious Brahmin, and he couldn't stay on that pious level. He fell down. So, in other words, to be in this age, just to remain on the platform of a Brahmin, on the mode of goodness, it's very challenging, in the sense that the material energy is so strong that it will sweep anyone away, practically. So people may do so many good things. They may be good people in so many ways. They may follow so many varṇāśrama principles and so on. But ultimately, what is Krishna looking at? Krishna is looking at why somebody is doing something, right? That's what he's looking at. Oh, look how great he's waving that incense up there on the altar. Like, look how artistic he's waving the incense. Like, Krishna doesn't care about that at all. Like, nobody else cares about that also. Not only does Krishna not care, but practically no one else cares. Like dharmasya Prabhu was joking one time. He said, oh yeah, no one notices who was on the altar this morning, performing Mangalarti. If we were to ask anyone who was performing Mangalarti this morning, who was doing the arti, right? Maybe half the devotees wouldn't know, right? If I was to ask somebody right now who was here. So waving incense in some artistic way, or even if one has yeah, I mean, you could say which is an art, right? You got to be a little fine to do that. Or also cooking or whatever it is. There's so many things that we do for Krishna. But those things in and of themselves, they don't please Krishna in the sense that Krishna's looking for why are we doing it, or what's the mood in which we're doing it. Just like, for example, Srila Prabhupada said that there was a prostitute, means, and specifically he was referring to, because there's also male prostitutes, but he's referring to female prostitute, which means she's selling her body for her livelihood. He said that there was a woman prostitute, and then there was a Brahmin, right? And he's got his Brahmin thread, and he's chanting his Gayatris and doing his yagyas and all the stuff, studying scripture, and he was across the street, and then he was looking across the street, and he was at this prostitute's house, and he was thinking all the time about how terrible she is. Oh, she's just selling her body, this and that, and it's terrible. What type of low-class woman is this? And on and on and on, thinking, meditating on how fallen and pathetic the prostitute was, right? And Srila Prabhupada explains that the prostitute was thinking, oh, looking across the street, oh, look at that Brahmin. He's so, so wonderful. He's so clean and religious and pious and, chanting his Gayatris and studying scripture. And Srila Prabhupada said that actually the Brahmin really didn't get the benefit of being a Brahmin at all. Because his mind, he wasn't thinking like a Brahmin. He was acting like a Brahmin, but he wasn't thinking like a Brahmin. But the woman, she actually got the benefit. She got the benefit, despite her sinful profession. So who gets the benefit? We're all here. We're doing service, right? Srimad Bhagavatam class is a service. Listening to Srimad Bhagavatam class, we're cooking, we're cleaning, we're shopping, we're distributing books, we're worshiping the deities. So we're doing all these things, all these services. And who gets the benefit? Well, or you could say, what does us getting the benefit rely on? Because as human beings, every one of us want to get the most benefit, right, for ourselves, right, our real benefit. So the more we could understand what we're doing, and the more we could do it in a right mood, the more benefit we'll get. And the less we understand what we're doing, and the less, and you could say the more we do it in a mood of a wrong mood, then we won't get the benefit. And eventually we'll think, what the hell am I doing here? I'm out of here. Right? Specifically the temple residents. And even those not in the temple. They think, what am I doing here? This is a waste of time. I could be making a lot of money. I could be on the freeway right now going to work, making a lot of bucks. I'm just wasting my time cooking Krishna's breakfast. Right? Which, if you study the eightfold daily pastimes of Radha and Krishna, they're broken up into times, segments. Who's cooking Krishna's breakfast? Srimati Radharani. That's who's cooking Krishna's breakfast. And then sometimes devotees think, oh, I don't want to cook Krishna's breakfast. I want to sleep, or I want to eat, or I want to mate, or I want to defend, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, right? I mean, this is Radharani in the spiritual, she's cooking Krishna's breakfast. So are we just, slapping together some half-baked or half-cooked halava, and with some rotten grapes or whatever, and et cetera, et cetera? Or are we trying to do it nicely? Or are we actually understanding that this is a super intimate service? Or are we just thinking it's a mundane chore, right? Or a spiritual chore? So we have to understand, try to understand what we're doing, and then try to do it in a proper mood. And then we'll get the benefit. Or else, just like this pious Hindu man, right, that Srila Prabhupada was commenting on, or just like the Brahmin, we don't see the point, and that eventually we just were swept away, more or less. I mean, swept away, we're in Maya, in the brahmacharya ashram, or we become a householder and we're in Maya in the grihastha ashram. I won't comment on the other ashrams. Sannyasis aren't supposed to be in Maya. Of course, no one's supposed to be in Maya, but... so therefore, varṇāśrama, Srila Prabhupada on his last days, on his disappearance bed, he commented on varṇāśrama that he wanted it established, and he was mentioning how varṇāśrama will help those, help people rise to the platform of sattva gun, live in a sattva gun, in a state of the mode of goodness. And specifically, Srila Prabhupada was referring to farm communities, cow protection, agrarian society, getting away from city life, which, for the most part, ISKCON has had a hard time doing. It is happening throughout the world in some places, but needs a lot of work. But living in those situations definitely helps facilitate a peaceful mind. Living in Pacific Beach or anywhere else in the big cities in the world, it doesn't facilitate having a peaceful mind. Which you could say, what's the point of having a peaceful mind? Well, we need a peaceful mind to chant japa, right? To think about Krishna. If our mind's always disturbed with so many things, then it's difficult to think of Krishna. So that's the value of it. Now, of course, the temple's transcendental, but again, we have to see in the right way. Like Prabhupada said about these Babajis these Babaji, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, these Babajis at Radhakund. He said they're not living at Radhakund. It's not so easy to live at Radhakund. Actually, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said they're living at Naraka Kund, which means, Kund means like a pond. Naraka means hell. So it's interesting because physically their bodies are there at Radhakund, but because of their activities, because of their wrong state of mind, they're not living there. So, but varṇāśrama, it is meant to help people live in the mode of goodness. But also these varnas and ashrams, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmins, these different, you could say, social positions. In the ashrams, the different student life and grihastha life and so on. These are meant to help us be responsible. And what are we responsible for? Well, first of all, we're supposed to be responsible for engaging ourselves, really. Our bodies, our minds, our words properly in Krishna's service. Not that we always have to remain a person who always needs to be checked on every day, every week, every hour. Is he doing the right thing? Is he up? Is he moving about? Is he doing his service, right? Not that we always have to be checked on. But actually, we shouldn't have to be checked on at all, really. We should come to that point. But responsibility means, for example, a brahmachari, traditionally, and even now, but the brahmachari, they would go and beg from door to door for the benefit of the spiritual master, for the benefit of the ashram, the temple. And in that way, this particular duty, and also they wouldn't keep anything for themselves, and it all would be about the guru serving the spiritual master. So in this way, the duties of the brahmachari is like wringing them out, and what's happening there? It's wringing all the selfishness out. Or for example, a woman within Vedic literature is advised and recommended that they have children. And why is that? One reason is that so all the they could just wring it like a sponge. You wring it out, all the selfishness. Or same with a father. They also have to think about their children and so on, take care, and this also helps them overcome selfishness. Hopefully, right? Sometimes they become, it's like extensions of themselves, so it's just like fueling the selfishness. It's like, I'm like serving me because it's an extension of me type of thing. But if it's done in a Krishna conscious way, it could wring out the selfishness. Or a sannyasi. Austerity of a sannyasi is just dealing with people. Flood of emails, flood of texts, flood of phone calls. Everywhere you go, someone wants to talk to you about their issues and problems. And maybe it's not issues and problems, but what do you call philosophical or what do you call theological questions. Hey, Maharaj, what do you think about this? And it's a constant affair. So that's an austerity. And if the sannyasi has any selfishness left in them, right, then that it could also be removed. So being responsible is extremely important. Or just like a householder. Rupa Goswami's advice, he says a householder should give how much in charity? 50%. Whoa, that's a lot, right? It's like 25% you bank for emergencies. 25% you give to who's it? Huh? Yeah, 25% you for your maintenance things. And then 50% for the spreading of Krishna consciousness, right? So then how exactly does that work? Does that mean like you pay your rent and you pay everything you need and then whatever you got left over, you give 50%? Or does that mean that whatever you make, right, you give 50%, but then how are you going to pay your rent and kind of take care of your maintenance? So how exactly does that work? One devotee was talking about this recently, and he said, well, if the bulk of what you make, if you can't give 50% and still maintain yourself and do all what you need to do and still bank 25% and all that, he said then you should make more money. And then what happens if you can't make more money? Well, then you obviously may not be able to give 50%, right? Because that's the ideal. So in that case, what do? Well, you might not be able to give anything, right? Because rent's very high, food's very high, gas is very high. Maybe you give, very little. So in that state, then the devotee should be very humble. I can't perform my duties properly. I'm enjoined to do this, but I can't do it. And through that humility, the devotee will get the blessings of the devotees of Krishna. So living in the present age, it presents particular challenges like that. But the point is to give something, charity, and this is enjoined for those who are making money, householders, to give charity, right? To tithe, as the church says. And why is that? Because it helps expunge one of this selfishness. And aside from that, it it helps with the spreading of Krishna consciousness, printing books, distributing books, keeping the temple going, building new temples, right? So these are the different austerities or the different things that will help us get free from this selfishness. And until we learn this and perfect this, well, you could say until we perfect this, we'll be imperfect in everything we do. We'll be imperfect brahmacharis, imperfect sannyasis, imperfect householders, imperfect devotees. It means that the potential to please Krishna has not, to please Krishna to the utmost, topmost level has not been fully realized by us. It means we're still holding back. Just like one time I was looking at, which I usually don't do because my mind isn't attracted to those things, and nor does it understand or process things like this. But I was in a board meeting, and they don't call it a board meeting for nothing, if you know what I mean. I was in a temple board meeting. Maybe none of the board members are listening right now, so it's okay. But and they were looking over who gave the donations, right, for the year. And it said, and it's tough because, in your board meeting, and then, oh, look at that person, he didn't give too much. We know he makes a lot, but he didn't give too much, and he could have given a lot more. I mean, sometimes comments like that are going around. A kind of cheapskate or whatever, But anyways, the point I was getting to is that in the top 10, there's hundreds of people giving donations actually. Big, small, medium, a lot of donations. And from a point of view, of course, if they have a lot, they should give more than a person who doesn't have a lot gives. But whatever, they're giving something. But anyways, I was looking at the top 10, and Majumdar was number 1, Dr. Majumdar. And then our Kevin, Bhakti Kevin, was number 2, because he was doing the college programs, distributing prasadam. He was number 2. Majumdar actually went up to Kevin at a Janmashtami and he said, "Oh, I saw the list, and he said, 'You're number 2.' Means I'm number 1, you're number 2. But I was surprised that on the top 10, if not number 3, I forgot the exact number, was a devotee, which I'm not going to say their name, but I know she didn't make a lot of money. Like, I know for a fact she didn't make a lot of money. Just working a 9-to-5 job, not having to pay rent in San Diego and having no other funds. And she gave she was on the top 10 of how many people, of how much money she gave in that year. So I was very impressed and surprised. So, so the idea is that Krishna, there's a saying, right? Krishna doesn't see what we give. Of course he does, but he doesn't see what we give, but he sees what we hold back. So you see these people, if they have a lot of, for example, finances, and they just give a little, then Krishna's saying, why are you giving so little? Like, that's not good. It's not good for you. It doesn't help you in the selfishness department, right? It doesn't help expunge you from that. And you're just being, miser. But then Krishna sees somebody who doesn't have much money, and still, somehow or other, they give a lot. And Krishna goes, wow, that's amazing. You don't have a lot, and somehow or other you gave as much as you possibly could, and I'm very, and he's impressed by that, or you could say satisfied by that. So, and for those who don't have funds to give, the idea is we just give whatever we can, whether it's our time, whether it's money, whether it's our words, whatever we give. But the idea is just to give it and not hold back and not calculate, right? Or just, and that's the problem, that people are always holding back. People are always holding back with Krishna. And therefore, they're putting the Bhagavatam verses like this. Yeah, they were great. Yeah, they were saintly. They were pious. They were good people. But still they couldn't attain Krishna or Krishna service. Why? Because they held back. But then you have other people in the Bhagavatam, Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, all these devotees. They were great. They were saintly. And they didn't hold back. And therefore they attained Krishna and Krishna service. So, in other words, just to go full on, full pace, full throttle, put the pedal to the metal, right? Just step on the gas, right? Whether it's distributing books, whether it's being fully absorbed in cooking for Krishna or doing deity worship, right? Worshipping Krishna, or whether it's cleaning, whatever it is, just full on. Just go for it. Don't hold back. That's the idea. Because it's a danger, because the danger, for example, of Brahmins, the danger of Brahmins, a tendency to be proud. Oh, I'm better, I'm more knowledgeable, I'm more clean, I'm more cultured. Look at these other Varnas, Kshatriyas, so passionate, Vaishyas, so greedy, Shudras, so, right, whatever. What to speak of the outcasts, a bunch of animals practically, right? And I'm a Brahmin, you know. Don't touch me, you're dirty. Don't even get close to me. Don't even talk with me. Right? It's a challenge. And you could say maybe it's extreme, but there's different levels. And then the dangers with Kshatriyas is too passionate, right? Just like so passionate. Not speaking, not thinking before they speak, not thinking things out before they engage in any particular activities, right? Offending people left and right. Why? Because they're passionate. Vaishyas, right? Trying to always got money on their mind, right? Problem, also a lot of passion there. Always thinking about money, right? You look at devotees and think, how can this person help me make money? Right? You don't think about how can we associate in a Krishna conscious way or something. How can this person help me make money? Shudras. Downfall of Shudras is always complaining. Prabhupada mentions that in the Gita. Complain, and not offer much help or solution to the problem. So these are the downfalls of these different people. So whatever situation there's danger, there's downfall. We could fall. So therefore the idea is just not to hold back and just to try to give it 100%. And that's the goal, to please Krishna. And as Prabhupada says, it really doesn't matter what activity man engages in. If he can simply satisfy the Supreme Lord, his life is successful. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? Tyler, you're shaking. Tyler has one.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just want to let you know that we have one question pending in the Zoom.
One question pending. All right. I have one answer pending. Yeah, I hope they match up.
Thank you for a wonderful class. You did a great job elucidating that theme. You stayed on topic the whole time, and you really stretched it out in a nice way. Thank you. There was so much to glean from that. The idea I'm kind of inquiring about is, so when someone does follow the prescription of tithing the way that they're supposed to,
Yeah.
the Vedic instructions, so what happens to that person? Krishna, he takes care of everyone. As devotees, he provides everything for them. Also, I know in one of our texts it says that like every person's allowed their quota
Yeah.
and nothing more. So someone who's just coming to this might be like, wow, I used to give 10% after taxes in my Christian church, So we're saying give 50%.
Yeah.
So, and that's a leap of faith. So you're showing faith in Krishna. I'm going to give all this money, but you're going to take care of me, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, it's a matter of, like, people don't mind spending on what gives them pleasure. Actually, people love spending on what gives them pleasure. No one thinks, oh, it's so difficult to save up. I'm living in Montana, working a job, and they're not paying me much, and I'm saving up to go to Las Vegas and big vacation with expensive hotels, expensive restaurants, and hanging out with all of my friends. And no one's thinking, oh, this is so like painful to say. I mean, it is painful to save up for it, but they're actually anticipating. They don't mind spending, for their pleasure, So in other words, what I'm saying is that if it seems like a lot, we should try to take pleasure in this being a service to Krishna. Like, for example, somebody may say, I want to give there's many devotees, they say, I want to give a donation to renovate the front ashram, or to renovate the lobby, or to get new doors, or to get new benches that you're sitting on, right? Joseph helped with the benches. So we should take pleasure in that. I'm going to beautify Krishna's temple. Not that I beautify my home and then I give nothing to Krishna, right? Prabhupada criticized that these people, they retire and they go to Vrindavan, and they have their family send them a stipend every month so they could eat and sleep and have have a roof over their head. And then they give all their money to their family. Prabhupada criticized those people. Okay, you give some, there's a percentage you could do. But Prabhupada was saying you could could renovate, the temples in Vrindavan. So many of them are falling apart. You could renovate the temples in Vrindavan. So in other words, we should take pleasure in beautifying Krishna's temple. We should take pleasure in donating our hard-earned money to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. We take pleasure in that. Say, yes, I gave a donation and this is how it helped the temple. Just see, this is so beautiful. Or I gave a donation and so many people are being benefited because we opened a new center, and people are coming, and I'm helping with this. Not to think I'm not giving anything, or I'm giving as little as possible. But we should try to, of course, depending on our situations, it may differ how much we could give and so on. But the point is to give something. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had he had many amazing disciples. I mean, sometimes, devotees think anybody who is involved in the Gaudiya Math is like, lower or something. But he had so many amazing disciples, if you read in that Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava book. And one of his disciples, he was a householder, and he's working. And it said that he would go to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and he would give the whole check to everything to him, literally. Like, he wouldn't hold anything. And then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would have to go to this devotee's wife and, give some money back to pay for the expenses and stuff. Of course, that's very extreme. He had so many amazing disciples, though. Of course, Srila Prabhupada's or Srila Prabhupada, but yeah.
I had one last quick thought was when you said, what if you're not able to meet all your expenses and then pay 50%? And one solution was, okay, well, go try to make more money. I was thinking downsize. Yeah.
Yeah.
Downsize your life. And
Yeah,
give
that's
the
another
access to
thing.
Krishna.
Of course, people would say, hey, well, I like to downsize, but the government of San Diego is charging me $2,500 for rent. So what are you talking about downsize? What do you want me to do, live in a cardboard box on the street or something? But there is something to that, downsizing, making things simple. Like Kolavecha Sridhar, he was living in a shack, right? It's falling apart, and what was he doing? He was selling banana leaves, which cups, right? Cups, plates, right? Which isn't a very, not a very lucrative business. Why? Because there's, in Mayapur, there's a bunch of banana leaves everywhere, a bunch of trees and so. But still, he was giving 50% of his earnings for the worship of Mother Ganga. But you could see how he was living. Very simple. So there's something to that. Like, let's say somebody's spending $500 a month on Starbucks, right? A devotee. You say, why would a devotee be doing that? You say, well, hey, I'm getting non-caffeinated Frappuccino or whatever you call it. Is it called Frappuccino? Is that what it's called? Okay. Well, maybe stop drinking your Frappuccinos, your non-caffeinated Frappuccinos, and sponsor $500 worth of books for the benefit of the conditioned souls, right? Or whatever. There's so many ways to kind of downsize. Say, well, I'm spending $2,000 a month eating out. Well, maybe cook at home and use that $2,000 to have mass prasadam distribution somewhere, at a college or something, benefit conditioned souls. So anyways, there's different ways to kind of analyze things and try to, right. I think Dimitri.
Thank you, Balaram, for the class. How can you tell that by engaging in Krishna conscious activities, you're actually satisfying Krishna?
Well, one way is to, if you're satisfied, means not some cheap satisfaction of the body or mind, but means if you're actually feeling happy, like spiritually happy, then that is a indication. But that's not the ultimate indication. Means that the devotee should also be happy with you. If we're thinking that we're pleasing Krishna and everybody's mad with us, like a shopper goes out and spends $5,000 when he's supposed to spend $800 or something for the week. He says, I'm pleasing Krishna, right? I bought, whatever, all this fancy water from New Zealand for all the devotees. And whatever, I bought this, and that, and I'm pleasing Krishna. And the temple president's looking at you like, what's going on, Prabhu? You play? In other words, it has to be under the guidance, instructions of devotees. Devotees, serving Krishna doesn't just mean serving Krishna, it means serving Krishna and his devotees. So they should also be happy. But the main way to know that we're pleasing Krishna is, also if the spiritual master is happy. So we should get a spiritual master. And then if the spiritual master is happy with us, then that's an indication that Krishna is happy with us. We should have that faith. Because someone would say, well, what do you mean if the guru's happy, then Krishna's happy? But, okay, but means they don't have much faith in the guru. You have to have faith in the guru as being the external manifestation of the super soul. Okay, Dravida Prabhu.
Thank you for the answer, Prabhu. That question, years ago I came up with this phrase, which I think you'll see is kind of intuitive, and that is the flow of authority.
Yes.
Flow of authority. How do you know that this guru is, because he's working under his own guru, up and all the way back to Krishna.
Yeah.
And your other answers were also important, but this the main way that you understand is that, because I mean, I heard a lecture, I forget when it was, where he's answering a similar question. Well, the temple authority. In other words, I've appointed this person as the temple president,
Yeah.
and he's appointed this person as the temple commander.
Yeah.
And so if you clean the floor in the right way at the right time, then you can be sure that you're pleasing Krishna.
Yeah.
Like that. But of course, we also have the general instructions. Chant Hare Krishna. I mean, you can do that whether you have a guru or not.
Yeah.
And you can do all these things, and you'll feel some spiritual enlightenment, some spiritual pleasure. If you even as a guest, you come and you take part in the Rath Yatra festival, and you're chanting and dancing, and there's some pleasure there for sure. But how to go if you're really serious and you're doing day by day service is by the old phrase, it's authorized. What you're doing is authorized, Prabhu. Don't worry about it. To wash the pots, please.
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of the devotees joining the Krishna conscious movement, they turned away from authority, right? The society and the leaders of society, they turn away. And then they come to the movement, and then we say, now accept authority, right? They're like, accept authority? I left authority, and now you want me to accept authority? So guru and sadhus and scriptures and all. So it's a little tough. But I remember one devotee said, oh, how many devotees does it take to change a light bulb, right? And then the devotee said, well, you need a GBC, you need a temple president, and you need a temple commander to convince the bhakta that Krishna wants them to change the light bulb. Yeah. Sometimes it's difficult to convince devotees to do things that make sense. And I was on book distribution one time, and I have gone before. I was on book distribution one time, and I was with this devotee, and he was newer brahmachari, and we were doing like shop to shop, and I was encouraging him to go into this yoga center. It's kind of like Mayavadi, And then he had this whole thing going on in his mind that he wasn't sure if he should do it or not, on the basis of, we're kind of like, going into their space and, distributing books. And I said, well, that's what we do. We go into people's space and we give them books. And I got a little, my mind got a little irritated with it, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit. And then he was saying, I'm going to call the temple president, and Nitya Gaur, who it was. And that was also a little irritating because he wasn't trusting me. He said, I'm going to call the temple president. And then he did it. He called the temple president. So it's hard to accept sometimes. No, he never, I don't think. Yeah, and we were going, and I went and punched the car window in. So the principle is that we should try to develop faith in at least some devotees, right? I mean, even on the basis of just as Dravida Prabhu said, the flow of authority. They ask, okay, if they're asking, hey, Bhakti Dimitri, go to Chase Bank, rob it, come back. You're like, hey, Prabhu, I think that's a little, out of the question, But if they say, hey, Dimitri, we want you to, go here and distribute books, and you're like, I don't know if that's a good place. Like, let me check with the temple president, and let me think about that. You just trust. You trust it. Like when you're on the battlefield. The sergeant says, move left, move right, go forward. And then you're thinking, wait, I don't know about left. I don't know about, yeah, let me check. That's a recipe for disaster. And when you're thinking about, overthinking, you get, shot down quick. So just, sometimes just to move, that's important. All right, one last question, Zoom.
Balaram Prabhu?
Yes.
Dandavat Pranams. Thank you for your class. Prabhu, my question is, what is the difference between sin, piety, and devotion?
Sin, piety, and devotion. Well, sinful activities is just the path of degradation in this life and the next. Pious activities, they're good, but they're not good enough. They may get you a higher destination, right, or a materially higher destination. And in and of themselves, they're not they're not going to give us love of God. And you said the last one was devotion.
Devotion.
Devotional service, of course, there's regulated. There's spontaneous devotional service, and then there's devotional service that is our main inspiration. Being that, okay, we know it's good for us. We're convinced, right? The Guru says, the Scripture says, so let me do it. But devotional service, whether it's eventually, over time, if we engage in the right way, it's not the path of degradation. It's not going to give us a higher material destination in this life and the next, but it will give us the highest destination in this life and the next, which is love for Krishna, devotional service, and also going back to the spiritual world. So those are the basic differences. Would you like to add on that, Dravida Prabhu?
The piety is a category that ultimately includes devotional service in a broader sense. But your divisions are right, because Prabhupada would sometimes give the qualification materially pious. Like a karma kanda activity. Krishna says, Chaturvadabhajan Sukritano. There are 4 kinds of pious people who come to me. But none of them are pure devotees. And some may come with a material motive. So you may perform some pious activity that's not sinful, it's according to Shastra, but your goal is material, to go to heavenly planets or get a good birth on this planet. But devotional service is transcendental from the beginning, even from the beginning. And so the goal is ultimately the final beatitude, as we say.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so tomorrow Govardhan Prabhu will give a class. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.